Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with episode 705 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened across NXT and AEW over the last week. With NXT, you are building for that special Roadblock show. AEW, of course, fast on the track to Revolution in a couple weeks. That show is loaded up. Really, both of these shows, Roadblock and Revolution, are looking tight. And we're going to discuss all of that and more before this episode is out. On the way in, allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about the fire.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating. Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Audio episodes, if you choose to listen there. Clips of our video interviews, posted 3 from our awesome Becky Lynch interview a little while back, all up there at Getting Overcast on YouTube. Need about 90 more subscribers to reach a threshold, bunch more watch hours, then we can start monetizing the channel. That is the goal. Please don't just visit it, but subscribe. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky for episode drops, news analysis highlights, and all of that good stuff. Lastly, as we get into this show,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. On that note, we haven't been hitting you with those instant reactions over the last week. It was our taping schedule. We ended up doing a lot of stuff with Vintage Chris Vanini on Monday night. We're unable to do Raw. I was unable to watch NXT live or AEW live Tuesday and Wednesday. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Fastest 5 minutes returns Friday night with your go-home show for WWE Elimination Chamber, free on buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Don't miss that. It'll give you a little bit of a taste in terms of what you get normally as a subscriber to buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We have a ton to discuss on today's show, and guess what? We're not going to waste much time doing it. We're talking NXT and AEW. There are timestamps, as always, in the episode description, so make sure you check those out if you want to bounce around. As always, I hope you listen to the entire show. Kicking off with NXT. The North American Championship was on the line. Stephanie Vaquer defending against Carmen Petrovic. This opened the show, and it was clear that Stephanie had worked with Carmen over the prior week because she broke out all types of counters and stuff that she had never done before. Vaquer hit her thigh driller, which I will keep calling that until it gets a name. It's actually like a leg scissors driver, but I digress. Petrovic came back with a nice basement spin kick. Stephanie caught her with eat to feet and a 619. She got caught on a springboard with an anti-air super kick, but she took Carmen off the ropes with the dragon screw and hit SVB for the win. I never would have guessed that this match would go so hard. We know Vaquer elevates everyone who steps between the ropes with her, but Petrovic is very much still a neophyte. I have zero doubt they did some training sessions this past week, probably got Carmen to the tippy top of her game. This had no business getting 3.5 stars in a B, but that's what I'm giving it. It was quality to that level and a fantastic TV opener. Most interesting is what happened after the bell. Giulia entered. She praised Stephanie, but disagreed that she's the best champion in NXT. Vaquer said La Primera means champion of champions, so Giulia decided they should find out who's the best. Vaquer said they're friends, but she decided they need to do title versus title, champion versus champion. And look, this is obviously fire matchmaking, but it came across immensely odd Tuesday night, having not known any details, at least at that juncture. It felt far too soon to not only have them match up, but do a title versus title match, just given this immense strength of the women's division in NXT. As it turns out, Giulia is dealing with an injury that might lead to an actual title change in this forthcoming match, or perhaps an attack of some kind where she gets written off the show and then has to vacate the title, not from Stephanie, but from someone else. But learning that about Giulia's injury basically erased a lot of the criticism I had prepared for this. All the same, I got to imagine there were other options. Jordynne Grace, Roxanne Perez. Okay, maybe she's getting called up, but you could probably put the title on her, run a quick program out to Stand and Deliver, have someone else win it, and then go from there. Cora Jade, Bayley, another woman from the main roster. It just kind of feels like going title versus title and possibly strapping up Vaquer with both of them. It's kind of the lazy way out to just crown someone who's already champion. And I really hate the idea of Stephanie vacating the North American title just weeks after winning it, similar to what happened to Keith Lee back in the day. A ladder match at Stand and Deliver for a vacant North American title, given the quality of this women's division, that would be baller. Like, let's not front on that, but I just don't know that her winning it and then vacating the North American title to get us to that point is the best possible call. So it's going to be interesting to see the way they pull this off next week. Jordynne Grace opened hour 2, saying she knew she belonged in WWE the second that she stepped foot in the ring last year. She said her goal since then is to become a champion in the world's best women's division. She put over Giulia and Stephanie, but said they felt the shift when she joined them in the ring last week, and she'll soon be standing across from them fighting for the title. Roxy interrupted, taking credit for raising the rent in the division. She called Grace a big fish in a small TNA pond, but Jordynne shot back that it can't be Roxy's division if she doesn't have the title. Perez said she's going to win Elimination Chamber, go to WrestleMania before she comes back and takes both belts. Grace did the whole everyone has a plan until they get smacked in the face gimmick. She socked Perez in the mouth, and that was pretty much the way it ended. She also did lose her top in this scuffle.
PG, brother.
That's like the second time that's happened to Jordynne in a month. She may just want to go with like a different look when she's getting physical. Not that I'm complaining. I'm just simply saying you need to be careful with that. So nice little confrontation between them. Going Giulia Stephanie at Roadblock does leave the door open for another big time women's match since both titles are otherwise occupied. And Roxy Jordynne would be massive for that show if it gets booked. So I'm totally here for that. And I'm actually a bit more interested in that match than the title versus title, given it feels like we know the outcome to that one. But if both of these matches are on Roadblock, plus some other stuff that happened on Tuesday night, then that is shaping up to be a massive card. It is in the Madison Square Garden Theater, and clearly they want this to be a big deal. The TNA X Division title was on the line, Moose defending against Lexis King. There was a brief heel confrontation backstage with King telling Obafemi that he was worried about the wrong guy since they were in Cincinnati, basically saying he was going to beat Moose. Moose hit a high-angle dropkick with King flying outside over the ropes. He came back with a huge flying forearm running off the ring apron. Moose then caught him flying for a bookend and back body dropped him out of the ring onto the elevated rampway. King impressively countered a powerbomb with a hurricanrana, hit a full tope con hero outside. Moose actually made me audibly laugh at the absurdity of a man his size doing an Escalera turnaround crossbody and then a kip up, followed by a powerbomb, all for a false finish. King nailed him with Coronation for another false finish, with Moose catching King, the Bobby Lashley-style spear, which I don't like, for the retention. I talked about the women exceeding expectations. This exceeded expectations. I've seen some impressive Moose matches, but I'm not entirely well-versed with him, just given I don't watch much TNA. This was immensely impressive, and King works so much better with bigger opponents. He can throw his body around and know that he can get protected. I'm going to say 3.75 stars B+. Maybe I'm selling it short a little bit. I don't think so. I believe that's right. But King working that deep into a match with Moose was probably more significant for his stature in NXT than anything he's done on the brand to this point. So Obafemi interrupted after the bell, telling Moose all that matters is a match between them. He informed that Ava made it official. They will indeed fight at Roadblock. And I thought he said title versus title, and I was going to lose my mind over that. But on rewatch, he actually said Titan versus Titan, which made me feel a lot better because the former would have made no sense, would have equated the NXT title to the secondary title in TNA, the X Division, which doesn't fit. But we don't have to worry about that. All we have to worry about is the ring imploding.
No bread, no water, just me.
This is going to be an absolute banger and probably a nominee for Big Meaty Moment of the Year. Ava later announced the match would be for the NXT title, which should lead to an Oba win, theoretically, and that would be a massive positive if so. Trick Williams was in his feelings backstage, having not won in 2025, when Javon Evans came in saying he feels him because he's in the same spot. Trick snapped at him, saying he's fighting over the NXT title while Javon is fighting over a smile. Williams kept cutting him off, really rude, and told him to stay in his lane. It got crazy heated between them until Ricky Saints came through to kind of ease tensions. He dapped up Trick, and he started preparing for his match with Javon. I loved this. Sure, it was all a bit canned, but Williams finding some character, Evans not shying away from him, that was quality. I want to see this aggression from Trick manifested in his wrestling. I don't want flashy trick shot bullshit. I don't want some of the other stuff he does in the ring. I want this guy, when he has his next match, we'll talk about that in a moment, to beat the shit out of his opponent. And, get some power moves going. You're a big dude. You're a college football wide receiver. I think 6'4", 6'5", all the weight in the world. And you're doing a pump knee as your finisher? No. That ain't it. So hopefully, again, this aggression manifests itself in his wrestling. Eddie Thorpe later got a video package while walking in Cincinnati talking about his people being forced from the land there. He was frustrated at being denied another title opportunity despite beating Trick at Vengeance Day. Thorpe said Williams could name the time and place for a rematch. He would be game. This was easily Thorpe's best promo since debuting in WWE. Not even a question. Came across like a real motivated person, and I wouldn't be surprised if we wind up getting Williams and Thorpe in a number one contendership, or the winner of that match ends up being the number one contender. Of course, that would be Trick going against Oba at Stand and Deliver, the match that we have all expected. So we had Javon and Ricky against Ethan Page and Wes Lee. This main evented the show. Saints entrance, it was solid, like from the music to the graphics package to the lights. It was like a reimagining of his AEW theme, but it was far, far better, the AEW theme. This just needed way more bass. It needed oomph to it. It worked okay. However, they started it with "Welcome to the Revolution," like the typical ridiculous Def Rebel signature. It starts hot enough, the music, where it doesn't need those words. If they were going to do anything, it should be "Revolution is televised," which is eons better than "Welcome to the Revolution." But as we've seen with other themes and entrances, maybe this will go through a half dozen revisions and they finally land on like a best possible version. As of right now, I'd call it like a 6.5 out of 10. And for someone like, I almost called him Stark, Saints, when you're bringing him into your company and he's saying he's going to be the focal point of the brand, that entrance should be an 8, 8.5, 9. And as is the case with WWE in general these days, they fall short in the presentation department, which is wild for a company that purports itself to be more entertainment than wrestling. Anyway, Evans took a sidewalk slam into the top turnbuckle from Page. Great spot. Page then did a tugging pop-up power slam, which was also really sick. Saints took Page down with a tornado DDT and a tilt-a-whirl gutbuster. Evans toped him outside. They fought through the crowd, leaving Saints and Lee remaining. Ricky took out Tyreek Igwe and Tyson DuPont, only to eat a Meteora blind from Wes. Saints stopped cardiac kick by catching Wes on his shoulder, then stood with him in his arms, hit Rochambeau, and got the win. There was also a loud "Tony fumbled" chant during this match, and again after the bell, obviously referring to Tony Khan and his booking of Ricky. It even led to Ricky briefly at one point laughing when he understood what the fans were saying. I thought they were chanting, I swear to you, "Funky butthole," and I don't know why, but that's what I heard. I guess I wasn't thinking in my mind that the fans would actually chant "Tony fumbled," but man, that's kind of a brutal chant for NXT. And I mean brutal in a positive way from that crowd. It was a Cincinnati crowd, not the Orlando crowd. I don't believe the Orlando crowd would have done something like that, but a road crowd chanting like that, it definitely shined through in terms of one of those moments from NXT where you're like, oh, wow, they actually did that. It was a recognizable moment from the show is what I'm trying to say. This match, quality, great debut for Ricky, clearing the ring to let him and Wes go through it at the finish. That was really smart because you want him featured. Extremely strong main event to cap an excellent show from start to finish. Not that much else to really take away from it other than to say that Saints' presentation on wrestling has been on point, but the entrance does still need work. And again, that is tradition with WWE these days. By the way, Page was probably the MVP of this match. He was awesome throughout the entire deal. I'd say 3.5 stars B. We don't really grade when it's that or above, but my point is it wasn't a B+ match, but it was just really high quality throughout, really entertaining. The Hardy Boyz fought NQCC in a non-title match. They are the TNA Tag Team Champions. They came out to Jeff's classic entrance. The crowd lost its shit. It was a really cool moment. Vic Joseph also broke out a sick-ass line. He said, "The ovation is so loud, even Miles Bourne can hear it." Yeah. For those who don't know, Miles is deaf. Okay, another funny moment was Ren Sinclair doing Jeff's taunt dance and Charlie Dempsey having to physically restrain her to stop. Matt hit a DDT. Jeff did his jump off leg lariat over the ropes and into the ring. He also did Whisper in the Wind much later, and QCC combined for a fireman's carry DDT before Bourne 8 Twist of Fate into a neckbreaker. I think it was called Plot Twist. That's a great name if so. Matt then hit Twist of Fate with Jeff adding Swanton Bomb for the win. Just a whole lot of fun and nostalgia wrapped into a match. Commentary, Ren and Charlie, all on point. The Hardys ran through their signatures. They broke out a few new wrinkles, which was pretty cool. And QCC bumped their asses off for a pair of legends. It was wild seeing the Hardys in NXT to start, especially Jeff in NXT. But getting a match of this quality was surprising. They both look to have gotten much healthier over the last year, which is great for them. But obviously, Jeff being back in WWE, given the way he left and all that, there's got to be some fences that need mending there. Fraxium, which was watching the match from the stage, welcomed the Hardys to NXT with Matt putting over their run. Nathan Frazier said they're the greatest tag team in the world today, standing face to face with the greatest tag team of all time. Jeff challenged to determine the best tag team in the world. Santino Marella came out to his old WWE music. He got a rousing ovation. And then he announced the match for Roadblock with only the TNA titles on the line. He did visually get emotional at the crowd response to him, and it was a really sweet moment. Now, the booking is slightly concerning because it would appear to predicate a Hardy's win. But given Fraxium has literally been the best tag team in the world, they really should not be losing to anyone, even an all-time team at this juncture. Perhaps there's shenanigans, something crazy happens, so it all makes sense. But they're so dominant and they've won so many matches and defended the title so many times that giving away a loss, even to the Hardys, it just doesn't feel right. It's like when Gunther lost to Cody Rhodes. It was like, okay, that's a legitimate person to lose to, but it didn't feel right for Gunther to lose that match. And I don't think it would feel right for Fraxium to lose this one either, but I also don't think they're going to become the TNA Tag Team Champions. So I'll refer, by the way, to buymeacoffee.com/gettingoverreporting on a Worlds Collide-like show. We were told a couple weeks ago something like that was going to be happening between NXT and TNA. We were not told it would be happening at Roadblock. I had just assumed post-WrestleMania, but man, those matches are Worlds Collide-esque matches that they're already putting on this show. And QCC was later shown completely laid out backstage with the new faction walking away. And I just have to again express frustration here. This has been, 3 weeks now, or at least 3 shows where this faction has existed. They still haven't given us anything. We've kind of seen their faces a little. We have no motivation. We don't have a name, so we can refer to them as something. They haven't sent in a promo, cut a promo. They had left one message on Ava's wall that was, random. It didn't speak to anything. You got to give us some meat. We need meat on the bone to actually care about something. You're not doing that right now. Right now, it's just people causing havoc, and they're beating up, I don't want to say nobodies, but mid-carders. And sure, they attacked Oba, but then Oba's like, yeah, I'm pissed off about that, but Moose, I'm worried about you, and I'm going to, he should be wanting revenge. He should be going crazy on Ava that he can't find these guys, and he wants them one-on-one in the ring, each of them, in a gauntlet match or something like that. So you're champion. You got attacked. They've done a really shitty job with this, so hopefully it improves going forward. Ariana Grace and Santino put themselves over for their tremendous NXT and TNA matchups on the show. Lola Vice came in demanding a fight against anyone. When Grace dismissed her, saying they didn't have time, basically, Vice challenged her directly. There was a great job by Morella here, bringing back the Cobra as Ariana was getting insulted by Lola, but then using his other hand and putting it down. I'm not sure if he does that in TNA. I assume not, but it was funny to see it in WWE. So we had Grace and Vice. Funny start. Both of them squared up with Ariana celebrating as she landed a couple punches. Vice ultimately won with her spinning back fist. She's definitely working better than ever. Grace was a lot of fun kind of squaring off with her, but this really was not much of anything, ultimately. Ariana posted on social media an incredible video from a bus on the way to the Cincinnati arena, which totally reminded me of a high school field trip. Kalani Jordan was talking some smack about Jada Parker, blaming others for her own failure, which Miss Parker overheard. So she snapped, went off on them, and they had to get separated. It was really her going off on Lonnie. Parker later backstage said Jordan lost her mind and is messing with the wrong one. Then she dropped this absolute gem. There may be a him in WWE, but baby, in NXT, you ain't her. First of all, If you didn't get to go on field trips that popped off like this in high school, you really missed out. Second of all, Miss Parker don't play. Cannot wait to see what she does through 2025. The ceiling is high. And Jordan Parker, this match, Lonnie, Jada, I mean, they've built this incredibly well for a non-title women's mid-card feud. This shit's gonna pop off, and I cannot wait to see it. Sol Ruca took care of Zarya backstage with it being revealed the latter has a sprained wrist. Piper Niven suddenly entered the training room as Secret Hervis, clearing the way for Chelsea Green. It got contentious between the four, with Sol saying they actually have won tag team matches recently, whereas the others have not. Piper broke out a taser, which totally popped me. It just came out of nowhere. And it all devolved from there with a tag team match getting set for next week. Piper looked great in her sequin suit. Don't love the idea of this match, given Sol and Zarya really should not be losing, and Piper absolutely should not be losing to either of them. So it's going to be curious to see how it's booked. I know I'm saying that in a lot of places coming off this NXT, but it's true. They're putting themselves in some really interesting quagmires. If it was me, I would have Piper beat Zarya. She has a sprained wrist. You play into that and give Piper a significant win. She's one of the most underrated and underutilized talents in this entire women's division across the main roster and NXT. Sean Spears got a promo package saying NXT is the land of the future, but also the misguided. He said Brooks Jensen was spiraling, but he's now been saved. Jensen was shown visually to have a full makeover with his hair and beard completely trimmed. Nico Vance's major transformation was changing from a white tank top to a black tank top, which was actually kind of funny. I don't think they meant it to be, but I laughed at it. And pretty much the same with Izzy Dame, though she also added black highlights to her hair. Spears called them his family, saying victory is not only inevitable, but guaranteed. With this makeover as a unit, I got to admit, they did look a lot better than prior incarnations. I still struggle to care about them, but I do see the vision more now than I have before. D'Angelo family were at the Italian restaurant. Stax was angry about his loss last week. Tony D came in saying you can't win them all, and he was nevertheless proud of him for leading the family while he was taking care of business. D'Angelo said he would handle Spears himself next week, and while Stax argued otherwise, D'Angelo was insistent of that. It was fine. I really don't have takeaways for this other than that Tony D's North American title reign has been a total waste to this point. I understand he had at least one, engagement with the CW. Maybe he's nursing an injury. Something happened. You criticize this stuff. We do all the time. And sometimes there are extenuating circumstances. But based on what I'm seeing on television, I mean, this was Tony really taking the next step in his career, having some meaningful, significant feuds with major talents. And it's also probably a part due to the men's division in NXT being so weak right now. But he hasn't actually been doing that. So we'll see what happens with Spears. I cannot imagine them changing the title. That would not make any sense. So NXT this week, extremely entertaining and solid from top to bottom. A couple high-quality matches on the show. Some highlights with Moose and the Hardys, coming in and kind of wrecking shop to a significant degree. And really, they just created a lot of talking points going forward, both for Roadblock and eventually Stand and Deliver. We will talk about all of that as it continues to further develop. With that said, let's move over to AEW. Collision was definitely a step up from last week. Dynamite remained strong, similar to last week. Not as totally hot as it was those couple weeks where I was heavily praising it, but the 4 hours of AEW was a relatively easy watch. Sure, mixed with a few frustrations, but all continuing to trend upward, and that's what we've been asking. Unfortunately, trending downward was the match relevance. 6 of 13 hit that metric this week. I thought we'd be approaching 75%. Instead, we're back down around 50%. There's really not an excuse for it, especially with Revolution so close. Next week should be better, though, in this regard, based on the way Collision has already been booked. I will say this. The Revolution card right now is looking absolutely stacked. Nearly every match on it has a pretty high probability of being a
banger.
And it's easily the most I've anticipated an AEW pay-per-view in at least 6 months, if not longer. So there's a lot that's happening on the show where, sure, I'll have my criticisms like I do for NXT and WWE for everything, but I'm more invested in it than I have been in a long time. And that is really important because the product really backslided over the latter half of 2024, backslided. I'll say backslided over the latter half of 2024. And it feels like it's starting to pick up steam again. Is that a consequence of Tony Khan's commitments with the NFL and doing other stuff? Maybe. I think for me, it's them getting a lot of talent healthy and available and then booking toward their strength and also making some significant changes in the Death Riders storyline. So let's go ahead and talk about everything that happened across Collision and Dynamite, and we're going to do it based on pretty much importance. We don't just do it based on order. So on Collision, Mariah May attacked Toni Storm backstage at the start of the show, dragging her onto the stage where she headbutted her and hit Storm 0. Then she demanded a spotlight. She cradled Storm's head, saying she never knew how to write an ending, so she'd write one for her in her own blood. May said it's their spotlight, their moment, and they should be stars together at Revolution, a Hollywood ending. Appropriate rubber match between them. I'm glad they're running it now, not dragging it out. Overall, this was short, simple. It was also my favorite segment between them in months. Tough to remember some of those early ones. I still fail to understand why all the development for this feud is happening on the B show in front of half the audience the A show gets, when frankly, it's the best storyline in the entire company. Even if I've been bored by it, the fans absolutely love it. But again, this with May and Storm, the best thing they've done in a long time. On Collision, Gabe Kidd of New Japan beat the Butcher in 4 minutes. Don Callis was impressed watching. He was then interviewed in the literal next segment and not asked about the guy he was watching. Instead, he and Kyle Fletcher called Will Ospreay mentally weak and accepted the steel cage match challenge. So another rubber match, and again, another one appropriately ending without getting dragged out. I'm not sure what's going on with Kidd, given he doesn't really seem to be moving on from New Japan. So why put him on this show for a 4-minute match? Maybe he costs Ospreay in the steel cage, and that leads to like a Forbidden Door feud or something else in Japan. Not totally sure what they're doing. On Collision, the Ring of Honor title was on the line. Chris Jericho retained over Bandito in 17 minutes. Tony Schiavone said Bandito was one of the biggest names in professional wrestling.
This is bullshit, man.
I just can't with Schiavone anymore. This was explained in story, but it's wild that this guy returned, beat no one, and is getting a major title shot. They did the showdown spot again to much less impact. Bandito did an Eddie Guerrero homage frog splash and a Spanish-style crossbody that it almost went bad, but it did not. Luckily, it worked. He added Go to Sleep. Jericho countered a 21-plex into a victory roll for the win. Really fun match with the expected winner. Easily the second best on the show. On Dynamite, Will Ospreay beat Brian Keith. This was explained as Callis off-screen, putting a bounty on Ospreay's head with Keith wanting to collect. And then we saw footage of Callis telling Jericho sometimes they need to outsource stuff. The guy has a 5-man faction. Mark Davis was literally standing next to him. He thinks Keith is the man for the job. So a nod for trying to create a reason for a random match, but it didn't even involve either of the competitors, the actual build. So they don't get any credit for this. Ospreay hit a Styles Clash and Hidden Blade got the win. Then he charged up the stairs to a box where Callis' family was located. He brawled with Fletcher before they got separated. The heat of the brawl in the crowd, despite being brief, that was enough to justify doing that. The match was quality, around 3.5 stars B. Good TV segment top to bottom. Didn't do much to make me care more about the match, but I don't think they needed to make me care more about the match. I already care about it. Trios titles were on the line on Collision. Death Riders beat Daniel Garcia and 2.0 in 17 minutes. There was clear reason for this match happening, but none whatsoever for the titles being on the line, given the challengers were 0-2 as a trio and literally lost a 3-way de facto number 1 contendership just a couple weeks ago. Garcia looked like Hulk Hogan there in yellow and red, which is really odd. Pac ended it with a brutalizer on Angelo Parker. By the way, The Brutalist is a superb film. Go see it. Pac kept it locked in after the bell, so Undisputed Not Kingdom saved for a brawl. Adam Cole and Garcia dapped up, and I thought it was pretty cool that the Undisputed Boys are getting regular TV time. I'm struggling to care about them, though. Jon Moxley was shown at the end of this. That led Adam Copeland down with a chair. Actually, I think it was 2 chairs. The other 6 guys fended off Death Riders. Cope hit 2 concertos on Pac with a straight face. So it looks like Pac gets more time where he can completely disappear from the group after coming back for 2 total appearances. That aside, the face is finally ganging up in a significant way, not just matching, but overpowering Death Riders. Huge step forward in the way the story is being told. On Dynamite, Undisputed Not Kingdom beat Garcia and FTR in 12 minutes. There was 0 reason given for Garcia teaming up with FTR instead of 2.0 when that has been his trio and the program that they've been working of late, especially given it was 2 face trios and Undisputed Not Kingdom has already beaten a Garcia trio recently. Cole beat Garcia with his own jackknife cover. That was a counter for a pile driver as his teammates were engaged in submission holds. They shoved each other after the bell, and Garcia Cole was not only announced for Collision, It had a match graphic literal seconds after the 1, 2, 3. Ridiculous production. Cole looks much better, by the way. Toned, tan, not yellow, healthy. I said it at the time. He got rushed back before he was ready. They never should have brought him back to do the MJF program. They should have just brought each of them back to do what they're currently doing. And that's it. And we could have wiped that whole bullshit out of our minds. Instead, they brought it back to the front of our minds. Now, Garcia Cole, that has been building for a few weeks, so the match makes sense. I'll remind you, Garcia won this title, a TV title, on November 23rd, and he has done absolutely nothing with it. So the title reign has been absolute dog shit. Dynamite opened with Copeland walking out the back of an ambulance, saying it would be the vehicle that the Death Riders take home for the evening. I actually thought when I saw the ambulance pull up and the doors open, for a brief second, I was like, is that going to be Shaquille O'Neal? Because he still needs to come out of an ambulance at some point, right? Mox in a tape promo appreciated that someone was actually playing for keeps. Claudio Castagnoli said he'd be hunting him as a result. So Claudio with Wheeler Yuta found Copeland later, beat him down with a chair. This came immediately after the match I just mentioned. So FTR, Cope's best friends, who could not have been far, their match just ended. And the 4 other guys who helped him Saturday, the guys who fended off Death Riders while he concertoed Pac, they were nowhere to be found for a save.
0.0.
Jay White eventually saved, with Copeland easily taking care of both guys. Yuta tried to hit him with a Bazaiku knee, but accidentally took out Marina Shafir instead, who took her second bump in, 4 months? Copeland did a single concerto to Claudio, and Shivani gave away what was going to happen next by saying Willow instead of Wheeler. And he did that as Cope was putting a chair under Marina's head. So Nightingale, who did not come out at any point to help stop Shafir, despite being attacked by her last week, should have been on the ready. Cope's coming out. I'm right behind you. I got to neutralize Marina. She waits until this is all over, comes out, delivers a concerto to Marina. Mox was incensed watching this. They all later got loaded into the ambulance as promised. This was again better than nearly all of what we've gotten from the storyline to this point, but it was so sloppily and nonsensically done that it remains frustrating to watch just from a logic standpoint. These are easy story beats to execute, and yet they just miss them one after another. At this point, no one but Yuta should be available for Revolution, as I believe he did not take a concerto. If any of the other guys are back, as previously happened in AEW, it's going to be another example of that devastating move not being treated with any care or any importance. At least this storyline has moved away from Mox's word salad promos about the soul of AEW, and it has been much better with Copeland and Jay White involved, and Willow finally remembering that she hates Marina and needs to stand up for the women in this company. It's getting better. There's no question about it. But it still leaves so much to be desired. Speaking of, on Dynamite, MJF sent in a video of him receiving laser tattoo removal, supposedly taking off that horrendous bet on yourself tattoo that was on the back of his calf when he re-signed with AEW. Footage showed nothing there, which is generally not how a tattoo removal works. It just doesn't disappear right away. So what that told me is it was either fake from the get-go, or he has gotten 10 treatments already and had it removed a while back. It was terrible in the first place, dumb as a gimmick. The segment was pretty stupid as far as I was concerned. After that, Hangman Page drove up in a Rivian with bullhorns on the hood. That's got to be the only one of those in existence. I've been seriously looking at Rivians, by the way. The R2 doesn't come out until 2026. I'm not sure if I can wait for it, but that looks like a sick car. Anyway, Page squashed Aaron Solo for no reason. He said he hates 3 things: running out of biscuits, English ivy, and a bitch with a spray tan spitting in his face. I think English ivy's a plant. I guess he doesn't hate the guy whose blood he drank a couple months ago. He demanded MJF come out, so he did. He told Hangman to check on his friend and find out which one of them is real. Cut to Christopher Daniels backstage, literally in the process of punching himself in the head to further open a blatant blade job with blood covering his face and his entire chest.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I mean, there was literally no other damage to this guy. He wasn't beaten up. His shirt was still tucked in. His pants were nicely hemmed. This was third-rate production and effort here. And even beyond that, the crowd did not give a shit.
Market zero!
On Dynamite, Swerve Strickland came out putting himself over as the first black AEW champion, saying he needed to refocus on the title and take care of Ricochet. Ricochet came out repeating that he's done with him, doesn't want to fight him anymore. Winners don't chase losers. Then, unfortunately, he got even more cheap heat.
Yeah, all your sports teams, they're all failures.
Prince Nana then made an offer, a rematch, but with a number one contendership on the line. Ricochet accepted. Nana then gave Swerve a pep talk about becoming the most dangerous man in AEW again, saying he's taken a ton of bullets for Swerve over the years. Swerve needs to get his robe back, or he may not be able to manage him any longer. And then AEW just cut away, kind of like ruining the drama of the moment. We barely got to see Swerve's reaction. Like, we should have seen Swerve either devastated or angry. Really, he should have grabbed a mic saying, Nana, you're right. You don't deserve that. I will get it back for you. It was all very odd. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? When it comes to Ricochet, he's doing better character work than ever. But the floor was so low that it was not really a high bar he needed to cross. I'm of the belief that people are immensely exaggerating the level to which he's improved simply because fans are buying into it. They're supporting him. They're appropriately booing him. Like, if he was a 3 before, he's a 5 now. But people are talking about him like he's a 7. And by the way, what happened to those gold scissors? They just disappeared now? The International Championship was on the line during Dynamite. Konosuke Takeshita retained over Orange Cassidy in the main event. Orange hit beach break into the announce table. Nice spot with great impact. Orange punch back inside plus a tope suicida tornado DDT ringside. Takeshita caught him with an elbow, only to get countered into Stun Dog Millionaire. Take then hit a cradle tombstone pile driver with Cassidy hitting a sick reversal into a pinning combination. Takeshita finally countered him into Raging Fire and got the win. Excellent match. Best of the week for AEW, right on par with the women's tag team title match on Raw. 4.25 stars A. Same grade. I'd put this slightly below that one, just given the fury of false finishes that we got. And we also knew that Orange was never actually going to win this one, which kind of reduced the impact of all the drama. But this was fantastic. Bell to bell, a highlight of the show. On Collision, there was a promotional package for Speedball Mike Bailey, who has been signed by AEW. An exciting addition to the company from an in-ring perspective, no doubt about it. Guy has put on some of the best matches probably in the United States over the last handful of years. Maybe North America is better to say, not just the United States. Just as I would have said with WWE, and I have said with WWE when it comes to talent returning, whether it's at TV, Royal Rumble, just announcing the signing through a video package, in this case on your B show, is immensely stupid. I get that it had been discussed extensively online, but your TV audience is not only internet fans, though I guess in AEW's case, to be fair, it's probably a much higher percentage. It's just a complete wasted opportunity for a shock appearance by doing this. And again, if you're going to do it, why not do it on Dynamite? It's possible I missed it. I don't think they replayed this on Wednesday night. Why? On Dynamite, Mercedes Moné backstage talked shit to Momo Watanabe through the camera. She ran into Billy Starks and popped a drink in her face. Starks obviously got angry, called her a narcissistic bitch. Then she called herself ROH superstar Billy Starks and said to watch her back, where Momo swung a bat and missed, grabbing the TBS title and saying she wants it. Unless Moné is going to start a program with Athena, and perhaps this will lead to that, all in being in Texas and everything, that would make a great spot for that match and maybe even a title change. This was a really odd segment. It was almost like AEW expected a pop for Starks for some reason, but of course they didn't get one. On Collision, Harley Cameron was interviewed in the arena doing her normal fun shtick, talking about telling her grandmother as a child she'd go to America, become a wrestler. She did a gimmick where she never actually took the microphone herself, so she kept like running back and grabbing it while emoting. Basically, the crux of this was that she's not going to stop pressing forward despite the loss. High energy, super entertaining as always. I wouldn't have minded it being a bit more serious, and I certainly would have preferred a little bit more depth to the content, but it was a nice segment. On Collision, Vendetta backstage gave Harley credit for being entertaining, but Deonna Purrazzo said her win over Taya Valkyrie was a fluke, and she wouldn't have as much success against her. Taya, with this like full yellow hair and wide lipstick with her roots showing, she's literally looking like the Joker on camera right now. Remember, by the way, when we used to get those weekly Vendetta packages and it seemed like Purrazzo was being given something to sink her teeth into? So much for that, because on Dynamite, Cameron beat Purrazzo in 8 minutes. Harley took a powerbomb and then just kind of stood up and hit her finisher. Like an inverted crossroads, she got the win. Obviously love Harley winning and AEW sticking with the push. That is positive. It stays laughable, though, the way Deonna is being booked. She has not defeated a legitimate upper tier talent in AEW since July. I actually looked it up. July. On Collision, Kazuchika Okada said he put Buddy Matthews down like a bitch and he'd do the same to anyone else. Better use of bitch than usual. The character is largely an eye roll for me. On Collision, Brody King beat Max Caster in 90 seconds. His promo before the match was longer than the match. He really said nothing during that promo. On Collision, Chris Statlander backstage told Thunder Rosa, next time those bitches, Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford, mess with them, they should swing on them. This was a reference to that disaster of a segment last week where Thunder didn't swing a chair. This was literally 15 seconds long. By the way, 4 hours of television, 4 bitches. Like the word bitch being uttered. On Collision, Murder Machines beat 2 jobbers in 75 seconds, then called out Hurt Syndicate in a nothing promo. They answered. MVP pointed out that beating jabronis does not make you deserving of a title match, but said if they beat a real team, they can talk about getting one. Later backstage, Outrunner suggested they fight the Machines for a de facto number 1 contendership. MVP agreed. He said it's good news and bad news. If you win, good news, you get a title shot. Bad news, you still get a title shot and you get your asses kicked. Given the Outrunners got some pub over the weekend with Dayton basketball, I assumed they would win despite Machines being the team that's been built up over multiple weeks. And on Dynamite, indeed, that's exactly what happened. Outrunners beat Machines with a roll-up as the Hurt theme played, which was meant to serve as a distraction, given Machines dominated the rest of the match. I didn't even understand why the theme played. Like, yes, they have been feuding. Hurt Syndicate is immensely confident. Why are they trying to cost them the match? Why are they trying to help the Outrunners? It just didn't really fit their gimmick. Zero doubt in my mind this was done to try and take advantage of that 15 minutes of attention. They didn't even spend time on the interaction. Syndicate just kind of like looked at them and then the camera cut off. Match was awful. Sometimes that happens. Remember when Hurt Syndicate, by the way, was recruiting people? What happened to that? On Collision, Hologram beat the Beast Mortos in 14 minutes. Absolute blast of a match. Good job by AEW recounting the storyline because there was an injury break. It would have been nice to actually do that through segments and promos as opposed to just a highlight package, but at least they did it. Hologram did a careful top rope hurricanrana and a rollover cover to ultimately get the win. He looked like a member of the 90s Seattle Seahawks with his gimmick. Mortos attacked after the bell because it's AEW. He tried tearing the mask. Commander saved for a 2-on-1 where they did some flips and Mortos just sat around waiting for them to attack him. The post-match was terrible. And it was interesting that LFI was discussed in the preview, yet it didn't play a role in what happened after the bell. No Roosh, no Dralistico, I think is the third guy. Nothing. Anyway, 3.75 stars B+. On Collision, Giulia Hart beat Queen Aminata in 10 minutes via submission. Really rough match. She took a couple gnarly shots to the face that busted her up, and Aminata stays taking L's. And lastly, on Collision, there was another Leo Rush and Action Andretti package that mostly consisted of them wearing sunglasses, debuting a new name, Crew, CRU, Crazy, Ruthless, Unhinged. I cannot say that in any presentation of them to this point have either of those 3 words, let alone all 3 of them, come to mind. This team is basically a non-starter to me. We'll see if anything comes of it. So that was AEW this week. Like I said, continued upward progression. Overall, much better shows than we have been getting, even honestly in January, but certainly through the end of 2024. Not my favorite week of AEW TV that we've gotten in February, but nevertheless, moving well toward Revolution. If they can shore up the logic gaps and the production errors and some of those things that year 5, year 6 in a company, they really shouldn't be having problems with anymore. If they could shore some of that up, it would be even more enjoyable of a watch. We haven't really talked ratings the last couple of weeks here on the show. We do have some time left on this episode. Let's go ahead and do it briefly. NXT dipped last week. For some reason, they lost 100,000 viewers. They went down to 689,000, 0.17 demo. It gained nearly all of them back this week, hitting 799,000 in a 0.19 demo. The ratings for NXT have been fantastic since the start of 2025. Obviously, it's US only. Doesn't include people watching on the CW app, which is free. And a lot of people don't have any type of way to access cable or broadcast channels. So I do think there are some people watching on that. Probably not many, though. AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, not including Max, of course, was at 563,000 with a 0.17 demo last week. Basically even from the week prior. This week, it went up a little bit, about 35,000, 598,000 viewers and a 0.18. So AEW has been at 605 or less for 5 straight weeks, and then 6 out of 9 weeks in 2025. You need to figure a portion of the audience is watching on Max. It's tough to say how many. I would guess that Dynamite is actually up from where it was in the winter, like November and December. But I'm also guessing it's only marginal, like probably 30 to 50,000 viewers a night. But if they can keep all of that and move it into a huge Revolution card and absolutely deliver there, it is quite possible. They can kind of, I mean, we talk about all the time, AEW resetting and, so on. But if they can take this, let's say incline of ratings, even though they're, the numbers aren't great, but if it is an incline, or it's because, again, you're taking the same numbers that we're getting on just cable and you're assuming a little bit more on streaming at least. So if you have that incline, if that is real, and you deliver a Dynamite, pun not intended, Revolution card, then maybe they can actually kick into something going into spring and then hopefully fall and going forward. But again, it's like, believe it when I see it at this point, because even in times where we had 2, 3, 4 really good weeks of TV, it'd fall off after that. With NFL season not happening yet and the draft not close, this is really the best time of year for AEW and for Tony Khan's booking. And hopefully they keep it up going forward. I think it's absolutely possible. So again, we don't go NXT versus AEW because they're on different nights, different competition. But certainly you're looking at the ratings themselves, and it's WWE's third brand and AEW's primary brand. And you're seeing 799,000 against 598. That's a 200,000 viewer gap, not counting CW app, not counting Max. That is significant, and that does kind of need to be pointed out. So that wraps up the week across NXT and AEW. We have an absolute ton coming for you on next week's episode. It will basically serve as your preview. I don't want to say ultimate preview because it's not a premium live event, but it'll be your preview for NXT Roadblock. That's happening on March 10th, and it will be the penultimate week of AEW television prior to Revolution. So should be loaded continually here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Between now and then, we will be back on Saturday with your WWE Elimination Chamber instant analysis as soon as that show goes off the air. If you have not already, make sure you listen to our WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview. It is in our podcast feed awaiting your ear holes. Of course, we will be back next Tuesday as well with your next WWE episode, and same bat time, same bat channel on Thursday, talking NXT and AEW. Thanks to everyone for listening to this episode on the way out. Allow me to remind you that this show
It's all about the fire.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star ratings on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the program. We want to get up to 500 reviews before WrestleMania 41. It is completely possible. If you listeners who have not yet left a review, leave one with the written word. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. And lastly,
I happen to love the number 5.
Sure hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Over head. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news posts every week. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.